Chapter 19, Interviewing and Qualitative Research. This is a little bit of a longer PowerPoint, so I do apologize, but there was a lot of information in this chapter that I think you could certainly make use of. So, the definition: qualitative interviewing is a key method in qualitative research designed to gather comprehensive information. And it's less about numbers and more about capturing the depth of participants' experiences and viewpoints. Qualitative interviews help researchers delve into the complexities of social phenomenon. Unlike quantitative methods that seek to measure, qualitative interviews aim to understand the why and how of a given subject. This is particularly valuable in our field, where understanding human behavior and experiences is crucial. So, an example in an educational context, interviewing teachers about their experiences with remote teaching during the pandemic could reveal insights into challenges, adaptive strategies, and the emotional impact on both educators and students. So, qualitative interviews are not strictly bound by a predefined set of questions or a rigid structure. Instead, they allow the conversation to evolve naturally based on the participants' responses. And this flexibility is key to capturing the complexity of the subject matter. This approach contrasts with quantitative methods, which are more rigid and structured. Flexibility is essential in qualitative research because it helps capture the full breadth of the participants' experiences and perspectives. An example: imagine interviewing a teacher about their classroom practices. As the teacher discusses their strategies, the interviewer might follow up on an unexpected theme that emerges, such as the importance of cultural diversity in the classroom. The interview seeks to understand the participants' perspective, experiences, and interpretations of their world. The interviewer should adopt an open and curious stance, prioritizing the participant's narrative. This focus on the interviewee's viewpoint is central to qualitative research as it aims to explore subjective meaning and experiences rather than imposing the interviewer's framework or assumptions. Example: in an interview with a school counselor, the focus might be on understanding their personal approach to supporting students rather than comparing their methods to a predetermined standard. Spontaneity in discussion is encouraged as it can lead to uncovering new insights and perspectives that were not anticipated by the researcher. Allowing for spontaneous discussion can reveal rich, unanticipated data, making the interview process more authentic and participant driven. So, an example: if a participant brings up an issue related to mental health that wasn't part of the initial interview guide, the interviewer should explore this topic further, even if it diverges from the original questions. While an interview guide provides a roadmap, interviewees often deviate from it to follow the participant's lead, and this departure allows for deeper exploration of topics that may be more relevant or important to the participants. Departing from the guide helps capture the participant's full experience and ensures that the data collected is not limited by the researcher's initial assumptions. An example: in a semi structured interview, if the conversation naturally shifts from discussing teaching strategies to discussing educational policies, the interviewer might choose to pursue this new line of inquiry. The primary goal is to gather detailed, in depth responses that provide a comprehensive understanding of the participants' experience and viewpoints. Rich, detailed answers contribute to the depth of qualitative research, enabling the researcher to draw meaningful conclusions that reflect the complexity of human experiences. So, an example: instead of simply asking, "How do you feel about remote teaching?" the interviewer might ask, "Can you describe a specific experience during remote teaching that stands out to you?" to encourage a more detailed response. Participants might be interviewed multiple times to allow for follow up questions, deeper exploration of themes, or to reflect on previous responses. Conducting multiple interviews can enrich the data, providing a more nuanced understanding of the participant's perspective. It also allows for the exploration of changes in the participants' views or circumstances over time. An example, a researcher might conduct an initial interview with a student about their experiences with online learning, followed by a second interview later in the semester to see how their views have evolved. In structured interviews, the interviewer asks a set list of questions with little room for deviation. This format is more rigid but ensures consistency across interviews. This type of interview is useful when the researcher needs to compare responses across different participants. The disadvantage is it might miss out on deeper insights due to its rigid structure. An education researcher using structured interviews to gather standardized information from teachers about curriculum implementation is an example. Semi-structured interviews, um, just, so these are a blend of structure and flexibility. And while there are guiding questions, the interviewer can probe deeper based on the participants' responses. So some of the advantages of this, it's balanced and allowing for more depth while maintaining some level of comparability. And the disadvantages is that or are that it requires the interviewer to be skilled in knowing when and how to probe further. So an example, a school counselor interviewing students about their experiences with bullying, allowing the conversation to flow naturally while ensuring key topics are covered. Unstructured interviews are the most flexible, often resembling a natural conversation. The interviewer lets the participants' responses guide the direction of the interview. And so this allows for deep exploration of the participant's perspective and can uncover unexpected insights. The problem can be that unstructured interviews um, may make it difficult to compare responses across participants and may require more time to conduct and analyze. Example, an unstructured interview with a school principal to understand their leadership style and challenges, where the principal's experiences dictate the flow of conversation. So, general research area, the process begins by identifying the broad research area of interest, and this is the overarching topic that your study will focus on. Defining the general research area helps to set the stage for narrowing down the specific questions and topics, and it ensures that the research remains focused on a particular field or issue. So, for example, if you're interested in educational outcomes, your general research area might be quote unquote factors influencing student success in higher education. Specific research questions. From the general research area, you derive specific research questions that your study aims to answer. These questions are more focused and guide the development of the interview topics and questions. Clear and specific research questions are essential as they direct the study's focus and ensure that the data collected will be relevant and purposeful. Example, a specific research question might be, how do first generation college students perceive the support they receive from their institutions? Interview topics. Based on your research questions, identify the key topics that will be covered in the interviews. These are the broad areas of discussion that will help answer your research question. Identifying interview topics ensures that all relevant aspects of the research question are covered in the interviews. Example, interview topics for the research question I just mentioned might include academic support, peer relationships, financial aid, and family expectations. Formulate interview questions. With the interview topics in mind, begin formulating specific questions that will be asked during the interviews. These questions should be designed to elicit detailed and relevant responses. Well-crafted interview questions are crucial for obtaining the rich, in-depth data needed to answer your research questions. An example of an interview question might be, can you describe a time when you felt supported by your institution during your studies? Review revised interview questions. After formulating the initial set of interview questions, review and revise them to ensure clarity, relevance, and alignment with your research questions. This step often involves getting feedback from peers or advisors. Importance. Revising interview questions helps refine the guide, making sure that the questions are well worded and likely to yield useful data. So, an example, you might revise a question to be more open ended or to avoid leading the participant toward a particular response. Pilot guide, you're going to conduct a pilot study using the interview guide to test how well the questions work in practice, and this involves interviewing a small number of participants to identify any issues with the guide. Piloting the guide allows you to identify and address any problems before conducting the full study, ensuring that the guide is effective in practice. Example, during a pilot interview, you might find that certain questions are unclear or that participants struggle to provide detailed answers. Identify novel issues. So during the pilot study, you may encounter novel issues or topics that were not initially considered. These insights can inform further revisions of the interview guide. Being open to novel issues ensures that your research remains flexible and responsive to the data, allowing for the exploration of new and relevant topics. An example, a participant might bring up an unexpected challenge they face, prompting you to add questions related to this new topic. Revised interview questions. Based on the pilot study and any novel issues identified, revise the interview questions to better capture the information needed. This might involve adding, removing, or rewording questions. Continuous revision improves the quality of the interview guide, making it more likely to yield comprehensive and relevant data. Example, after identifying a novel issue, you might add a question like, how do you navigate challenges that were not anticipated when you started college? Finalized guide. Once all the revisions are made, finalize the interview guide. This is the version that will be used in the full study to conduct interviews with all participants. A finalized guide provides a structured yet flexible framework for conducting interviews, ensuring consistency across participants while allowing for in-depth exploration of relevant topics. Example, the finalized guide will include a sequence of questions covering all the key topics with prompts for probing further based on participant responses. Building rapport. It's important to create a comfortable and trusting environment for the participant. This can involve starting with casual conversation or discussing the purpose of the interview to help the participant feel at ease. Before starting the formal interview, you might chat with the participant about their day or share a bit about your background to build a connection. The critical role of active listening in qualitative interviews is important. The interviewer should listen carefully to the participant's responses, showing interest and understanding. This helps the participant feel valued and encourages them to share more openly. Techniques like nodding, summarizing what the participant said, and asking clarifying questions ensures understanding. Explain or ask follow up questions based on the participant's responses to explore topics more in depth. For example, if a teacher mentions feeling overwhelmed during remote teaching, a probe could be, can you tell me more about what made you feel overwhelmed? Probing can lead to richer data and uncover nuances in the participants' responses that might not emerge from the initial data or response. Create order in topic areas. So, when preparing your interview guide, it's important to create a certain amount of order in the topic areas. This means organizing the guide so that the conversation flows logically from one topic to the next. A well organized guide helps ensure that all relevant areas are covered during the interview and that the conversation doesn't jump around too much, which can confuse both the interviewer and the participant. This structure helps keep the interview focused and ensures that all important topics are discussed. It also makes the interview process smoother and more coherent, which can lead to better data. So, if you're interviewing teachers about their experiences with remote learning, you might start with questions about their general teaching background before moving into specific experiences with remote learning and then discussing the impacts on students. Questions or topics included in the interview should be directly related to your overall research questions. This means that each question should be designed to elicit responses that will help you answer the main questions of your study. By aligning your interview questions with your research questions, you ensure that the data you collect will be relevant and useful for your study, and this alignment also helps you stay focused on your research objectives during the interview. So, if your research question is about the impact of socioeconomic background on student achievement, your interview questions should explore areas like the participants' experiences with socioeconomic challenges, access to resources, and perceptions of student achievement. It's crucial to use language that is both comprehensible and relevant to the participants. This means avoiding jargon or technical terms that the participant might not understand and using language that reflects the participant's context and experience. Using clear and relevant language helps ensure that participants fully understand the questions and can provide meaningful answers. It also makes the interview more comfortable for the participant as they won't feel overwhelmed or confused by complex language. So, for example, when interviewing high school students about their college aspirations, avoid using terms like post secondary education pathways and instead say college plans or what do you want to do after high school. Leading questions are those that suggest a particular answer or that influence the participant's response. It's important to avoid these kinds of questions to ensure that the data collected is unbiased and reflects the participant's true thoughts and feelings. Neutral questions help prevent the interviewer from unintentionally shaping the participant's responses, leading to more authentic and reliable data. So instead of asking, don't you think remote learning was difficult for students? You might ask, how did you find the experience of remote learning for your students? Gathering relevant contextual information from participants is important as it provides background or backdrop that helps interpret their responses. This could include information about their demographic background, work environment, or any other factors that might influence their perspective. Contextual information helps you understand the participant's response in a broader context, which can be critical for accurately analyzing and interpreting the data. So, example, if interviewing teachers, asking about their years of experience, the types of schools they've worked in, and the demographics of their student population can provide valuable context for their responses. So, introducing questions. These questions are typically broad and open ended and designed to ease the participant into the interview. So, they help to set the stage and allow the participant to start sharing their experiences in their own words. Example: can you tell me about your experience with remote teaching during the pandemic? Introducing questions helps to build rapport and give the participant the opportunity to share what they think is most important about the topic. Follow up questions are used to gain more depth or detail on a point that the participant has already mentioned. They help clarify or expand on the participant's initial response. So, if the participant mentions a challenge they face, a follow up question could be, can you explain more about how you dealt with that challenge? These questions ensure that the interviewer fully understands the participant's responses and can uncover more detailed information. Probing questions are similar to follow up questions, but are often used to explore areas that the participant might not have elaborated on initially. They encourage the participant to reflect more deeply on the topic. Why do you think this why do you think that was the case? Or can you tell me more about what you mean by that? Are some examples. Probes help reveal underlying issues, beliefs, or feelings that might not be immediately obvious. Specifying questions ask the participant to provide specific examples or details related to their general statements. They are useful for getting concrete information that supports the participant's broader claims. Example: can you give me a specific example of a time when you felt frustrated with remote learning? Specifying questions helps grounds the conversation in real experiences, providing concrete data that can be analyzed. Direct questions address a specific topic directly. They're usually clear and straightforward, aiming to get information on a particular issue. Example: how do you feel about the use of technology in your classroom? While open ended questions are useful for gathering broad data, direct questions can help ensure that specific topics are covered. Indirect questions are used to approach sensitive topics in a less direct manner, making it easier for participants to discuss them. These questions can help avoid putting participants on the spot. Example, some teachers have found remote teaching challenging in certain areas. How did you find it? Indirect questions can help participants feel more comfortable discussing difficult or sensitive topics. Structuring questions can help guide the interview by transitioning between different topics or phases of the conversation, and they are used to keep the interview on track. Example, now that we've talked about your general experience, can we discuss your thoughts on student engagement during remote teaching? These questions help maintain a clear structure in the interview, ensuring that all relevant topics are covered. Silence can be a powerful tool in qualitative interviews. Allowing silence after a participant's response can give them time to reflect and often leads to them sharing additional information. After asking a question, pause and wait quietly for the participant to continue speaking. Silence can encourage participants to think more deeply and provide more detailed responses without the interviewer needing to intervene. Interpreting questions. These questions are used to verify or clarify the interviewer's understanding of what the participant has said. They involve restating or summarizing what the participant has said and asking for confirmation or clarification. Example, so if I understand correctly, you're saying that remote teaching was particularly difficult because of the lack of direct interaction with students. Interpreting questions help ensure that the interviewer accurately understands the participant's perspective, preventing misinterpretation. The interviewer must have strong understanding of a research topic and the context in which the participant is operating. This knowledge allows the interviewer to ask informed questions, follow up on complex issues, and engage in meaningful dialogue with the participants. Being knowledgeable helps the interviewer gain credibility and ensures that the conversation stays relevant and focused on the research objectives. In an interview about educational practices, understanding key concepts like differentiated instruction or formative assessment can help the interviewer ask deeper, more relevant questions. The interviewer needs to structure the interview effectively, ensuring that it flows logically from one topic to another. This involves using structured questions and transitions to guide the conversation. A well structured interview helps cover all necessary topics without confusion or repetition, making the process smoother for both the interviewer and the participant. Start with asking broad questions about the participant's background before moving into specific experiences related to the research question. Clarity and communication is vital for ensuring that the participant fully understands the questions and can respond appropriately. This involves being clear and concise in the phrasing of questions and instructions. Clear communication prevents misunderstandings and ensures that data collected. I'm deleting this slide. Vignettes are short descriptive scenarios presented to participants during an interview. These scenarios are often hypothetical or based on real events, but are designed to elicit specific responses or to explore how participants might react in certain situations. They serve as a tool to ground the interview in a specific context, helping the participant to focus their responses on a particular situation or behavior. Vignettes are particularly useful for exploring sensitive topics or for understanding how people might behave in situations they have not directly experienced. By discussing a vignette, participants may feel more comfortable sharing their thoughts and opinions as the scenario is somewhat removed from their personal life. In educational research, a vignette might describe a classroom scenario where a teacher deals with a disruptive student and the participant, another teacher, is asked how they would handle the situation or what they think about the scenario. When using vignettes, it's important to ensure that they're realistic and relevant to the participant's experience. The vignette should be detailed enough to provide context, but not so detailed that it leaves no room for interpretation or discussion. Photo elicitation involves using photographs as a tool to stimulate discussion during an interview. The photos can be ones provided by the interviewee or selected by the researcher. In some cases, the photos might be taken by the participant themselves as part of the research process. This technique helps to trigger memories, emotions, and discussions that might not surface through verbal questioning alone. Photos can evoke powerful responses and help participants articulate thoughts and feelings that are difficult to express in words. This method is especially useful in studies where visual elements are central, such as in research on identity, place, or culture. In a study about urban development, participants might be shown photographs of different cityscapes and asked to share their thoughts on how these environments make them feel or what memories they associate with these places. When using photo elicitation, it's important to choose or create images that are relevant to the research questions and that will provoke meaningful discussion. The researchers should be prepared to explore the emotions and memories that the photos evoke, guiding the conversation to connect these with the broader research themes. Life history interviews are a form of unstructured interviewing where the participant is encouraged to recount their life experiences in detail. Unlike structured interviews, which follow a predefined set of questions, life history interviews allows the participant to take the lead, with the interviewer guiding the conversation as needed. This method allows for deep exploration of the participant's life, uncovering personal insights and experiences that might not emerge in a more structured format. It provides a comprehensive understanding of how the participant views their life as a whole. A researcher might conduct a life history interview with a retired teacher, asking them to reflect on their entire career, the changes they witnessed in the educational system, and how their personal life influenced their professional choices. Life history interviews are a subset of biographical research, which focuses on documenting and understanding an individual's life story. This type of research is particularly useful for capturing the complexity of a person's experience over time and how they've shaped their identity. Biographical research, including life history interviews, provides valuable context for understanding broader social and cultural phenomena by grounding them in personal experiences. It also highlights the interplay between individuals' lives and larger historical events or trends. Conducting life history interviews with veterans to document their personal experiences during and after military service and understanding how these experiences impacted their later life is an example. Oral history interviewing is a qualitative research method that focuses on gathering detailed accounts of specific events, periods, or experiences from the past. Unlike life history interviews, which explores a person's entire life course, oral history interviews are more targeted and concentrate on particular episodes or significant memories in a person's life. This method is particularly valuable for understanding how individuals experienced and interpreted key historical events or periods. It provides rich, first-hand accounts that contribute to the historical record, offering insights into how people lived through and perceived specific moments in time. An oral history interview might involve speaking with a veteran about their experiences during a specific battle or campaign in a war, rather than asking them to discuss their entire military career. The goal of oral history interviewing is to obtain detailed personal recollections of specific events or periods that the participant has lived through. These interviews help to capture the nuances of individual experiences and the way in which people remember and make sense of the past. Oral history interviews are crucial for preserving memories that might otherwise be lost. They provide a platform for voices that are often underrepresented in traditional historical accounts, offering more diverse and inclusive understanding of history. Example, interviewing survivors of a natural disaster about their experiences during the event and in its aftermath would be an example focusing on how they coped and what they remember most vividly. I keep thinking about 9/11, um, having been in Manhattan during the days of 9/11, and so it would be really interesting, for example, for an oral history to just capture, and this has certainly been done many times, but capture, someone's experience of where they were on the day and what they remember. So, birth and family of origin, you want to start by exploring the participants' earliest memories in a life history interview, including details about their birth, family background, and early life. This step sets the stage for understanding the context in which the participant was raised. Understanding the family of origin provides insights into the formative influences on the participant's identity and values. So, question: can you tell me about where you were born and your earliest memories of your family? Discuss the cultural environment in which the participant grew up, including traditions, customs, and societal expectations. This helps to contextualize their life within broader cultural frameworks. Cultural settings shape an individual's worldview, practices, and sense of identity. Example: what cultural traditions were important in your family when you were growing up? Explore the social dynamics that influence the participant, such as class, ethnicity, religion, and community. This includes discussing any social challenges or advantages they experience. Social factors play a significant role in shaping opportunities, challenges, and the overall life course of an individual. How did your social environment influence your life choices? For education, focus on the participants' educational experiences from early schooling to higher education. This includes discussing both formal and informal education and its impact on their life. Education often plays a critical role in shaping career paths, social networks, and personal development. What role did education play in your life? How did it influence your career choices? Is an example. Delve into the participants' experiences with relationships and work, including significant relationships, marriage, parenting, and career. This explores the balance between personal and professional life. Love and work are central themes in many people's lives, influencing their sense of fulfillment and identity. Example: can you describe your most significant relationships? How did they impact your work and life choices? Discuss how major historical events or periods, like wars, economic crises, social movements, impacted the participant's life. This helps to place their personal experiences within a broader historical context. Historical events often have profound impacts on individuals and communities, shaping their experiences and responses to life's challenges. Example: how did insert specific historical event affect your life and the decisions you made at the time? I was just speaking with someone yesterday, and I don't think many people in the class, if any, really remember this, but there was a financial crash in 2008. So I was speaking with somebody who was older and talking about their retirement funds, and they talked about 2008. So um, there's a lot of rich conversation that happened as a result of that particular historical event. Speaking of retirement, you want to explore the participants' transition into retirement, including their reflections on their career and their life after retiring. And this includes discussions on how they've adjusted to this life stage. Retirement is a significant life transition that often prompts reflection on past achievements and future aspirations. So, example: how did you adjust to retirement? What does this stage of life mean to you? Address the participants' inner life, including their spiritual beliefs, personal philosophies, and how these have evolved over time. This explores how they find meaning and purpose. Inner life and spiritual awareness often provide insights into how individuals cope with challenges and provide meaning in their lives. Example: how have your spiritual beliefs or personal philosophies guided you throughout your life? Identify and discuss recurring themes or patterns in the participant's life, such as resilience, change, or growth. Sorry about the interruption. So, recognizing major life themes allows both participants and the researcher to see connections between different life stages and experiences. So, an example of a question: looking back, what themes or patterns do you see running through your life? You also want to ask the participant about their hopes, plans, and expectations for the future. This includes their legacy, aspirations, and what they hope to accomplish or experience in the years ahead. Understanding the participant's vision of the future provides insight into their current mindset and how they perceive the remaining chapters of their lives. Example: what are your hopes for the future? How do you see the next 2 years unfolding? Closure questions. So conclude the interview with questions that allow the participant to reflect on the interview process and share any final thoughts. This provides a sense of closure and ensures that the participant feels heard and valued. Closure questions help to wrap up the interview in a thoughtful manner, allowing the participant to reflect on their life story and the experience of sharing it. Example: Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about? How do you feel about how do you feel after sharing your story? Now, seeing through others' eyes, in qualitative research, particularly ethnography, the goal is to understand the world from the perspective of the participants. And this involves seeing through their eyes, understanding their experiences, beliefs, and actions within the context of their everyday lives. This approach helps researchers gain deeper insights into the participants' realities, which may be different from their own. It's essential to develop a nuanced understanding of the subject matter. When studying a particular community, the researcher might adopt the roles and routines of the community members to gain a firsthand understanding of their way of life. Learning the native language refers to understanding the specific language, jargon, or communication styles used by participants in their natural setting. It's not just about literal language, but also about the cultural codes and meanings embedded in how people communicate. Learning the native language allows researchers to better understand the subtleties of participants' interactions and the meanings they ascribe to their experiences. So, example, in a study of medical professionals, this might involve learning medical terminology and understand how it is used in practice. The taken for granted. Researchers aim to uncover aspects of life that participants have taken for granted. These norms, routines, and practices that are so ingrained they go unnoticed by the people themselves. By bringing these taken for granted elements to light, researchers can reveal the underlying structures and assumptions that shape behavior and social interactions. In a workplace study, this might involve examining daily routines that employees consider normal, but which reveal important aspects of organizational culture. Observation is a key method in qualitative research. It involves watching participants in their natural environment to understand how they behave, interact, and navigate the world. Observing behavior provides data that participants might not articulate in interviews, offering a richer, more comprehensive view of their actions and interactions. Example, observing classroom interactions to study how teachers manage student behavior beyond what they report in interviews. Deviant and hidden activities. Qualitative researchers also seek to uncover behaviors or activities that are deviant, hidden, or not typically discussed openly. These might include taboo subjects or activities that go against social norms. So, studying deviant and hidden activities can provide insights into the complexities of human behavior and social life that are not visible in more public or normative settings. Example, researching the informal economy where participants might engage in off the books work that is not publicly acknowledged. Sensitivity to context means understanding that behavior and meaning are influenced by the specific social, cultural, and physical environment in which they occur. Researchers must consider these contexts when interpreting data. Contextual sensitivity ensures that the researcher's interpretations are grounded in the specific realities of the participants' lives rather than being imposed from the outside. For example, in studying family dynamics, considering how the cultural norms around gender and authority shape interactions within the household. Qualitative research often involves unencountered or encountering unexpected situations or findings. So researchers must be flexible and open to adapting their methods and focus as new insights emerge. Flexibility allows researchers to follow the data wherever it leads, often resulting in more meaningful and impactful findings. Example, if a researcher studying education policy finds that the real issues lie in community resources, they may shift focus to explore this new direction. A naturalist emphasis means studying people in their natural environments without manipulating or controlling the situation. The aim is to observe and understand behavior as it naturally occurs. This approach helps ensure that the data collected reflects authentic behavior and interactions rather than those influenced by the presence or expectations of the researcher. Observing how children play in a playground rather than in a controlled lab to understand social interactions would be an example. Embodied nature of experience. This concept acknowledges that people's experiences are not just cognitive, but also physical and emotional. Researchers must consider how the body and emotions play a role in shaping experiences and behaviors. Recognizing the embodied nature of experience allows for a more holistic understanding of human behavior, one that involves the physical and emotional dimensions of life. So, in researching dance, for example, considering not just the technical aspects, but also how the dancer's physical and emotional experiences shape their performance. Qualitative interviews allow researchers to explore topics that are difficult or impossible to observe directly. This includes internal experiences, private behaviors, or sensitive issues that participants might not openly display. This method is particularly valuable for studying phenomenon that cannot be easily captured through observation alone, such as personal thoughts, emotions, or memories. So, an example, interviewing individuals about their mental health experiences, which are internal and not observable from the outside. Interviews provide a platform for participants to reflect on and discuss past events, allowing them to offer insights into how their experiences have shaped their lives. This retrospective approach helps in understanding the impact of certain events over time. This reflection can provide a deeper understanding of how individuals interpret and make sense of their life course, offering insights into long term processes of change and continuity. For example, asking someone to reflect on how a significant historical event like the fall of the Berlin Wall affected their personal and professional life um, might be something relevant here. Interviews are generally less intrusive than observational methods as they rely on participants' willingness to share their experiences rather than being observed without their direct input. This can make interviews a more ethically sound choice in certain contexts. Ensuring that research methods are ethically defensible is critical, especially when dealing with vulnerable populations or sensitive topics. So, conducting interviews about personal trauma with full informed consent, allowing participants to control what they disclose, is an example. Reactive events occur when participants alter their behavior because they know they're being observed. Interviews can reduce these effects since participants are sharing their reflections rather than being observed in action. Minimizing reactive effects helps in obtaining more authentic and reliable data as participants are more likely to express their true thoughts and feelings. So, a participant might behave differently when observed in a classroom, but in an interview, they can discuss their teaching strategies more openly, as an example. Interviews can be less intrusive than observational methods, particularly in private or sensitive contexts. Participants have control over what they choose to share and how they present their experiences. Being less intrusive can lead to more honest and open communication from participants, especially in research involving personal or sensitive issues. For example, interviewing someone about their experiences with domestic violence in a private and confidential setting rather than observing their interactions at home. Interviews are well suited to longitudinal study, where researchers conduct follow up interviews over time to track changes in participants' experiences, attitudes, or behaviors. Longitudinal interviews can provide valuable insights into how individuals and their experience evolve, allowing for a more dynamic understanding of the research topic. Conducting follow up interviews with students over several years to understand how their career aspirations develop during and after college would be an example. Interviews can cover a wide range of topics compared to observation, as participants can discuss various aspects of their experiences, including those that are not directly observable. This broader coverage allows researchers to explore multiple dimensions of a participant's life, providing more comprehensive understanding of the research question. In a single interview, a participant might discuss their work life, family, education, and social histories, offering a holistic view of their experiences. Interviews allow researchers to focus on specific issues or topics of interest, directing the conversation to gather detailed information on particular aspects of the participant's experience. Participants need to be fully informed about the purpose of the study and how their data will be used and their right to withdraw at any time, and this information should be provided both verbally and in writing. So, providing a clear consent form that outlines the study's objectives, how the data will be stored, and the participants' rights is a good way to go. And I explain to participants that confidentiality, what that's all about, and how you're sharing information, and how you're storing recordings and transcripts. So, assigning pseudonyms, for example, might be a way of dealing with anonym, anonym, sorry, uh, anonymizing data. Um, and so let me start again there. Assigning pseudonyms to participants in the study's final report to protect their identity would be one way of anonymizing, I can't say that word, anonymi- anonymizing data. Okay, power dynamics. So, of course, these could influence the interview process, particularly if the interviewer holds a position of authority or if the participant feels vulnerable. It's important to be aware of this and to create an environment where the participants feel comfortable sharing honestly. So, in an educational context, if a school administrator is interviewing teachers, the administrator should be mindful of their position and strive to create a non judgmental atmosphere where teachers feel safe to speak. Transcription. So, the first step in analyzing interview data is transcription, converting the recorded interview into a written document. And this process can be time consuming, but is essential for accurate analysis. Um, the transcription should be as verbatim as possible, capturing not only the words, but also pauses, tone, and nonverbal cues where possible. Coding is the process of identifying key themes, patterns, and categories within the transcribed data, and codes can be developed inductively, meaning emerging from the data, or deductively, based on a pre existing framework. So, in interviews with teachers about remote teaching, codes might include student engagement, technical challenges, and emotional well being. Thematic analysis. So this type of coding leads to thematic analysis, where similar codes are grouped together to form broader themes that represent the core findings of the study. So codes related to technological challenges and student engagement might combine into a broader theme of barriers to effective remote teaching. Thematic analysis helps to summarize the key findings and draw meaningful conclusions from the data. Whenever you are quoting a participant directly, um, it's essential to enclose their exact words with quotation marks. This clearly indicates that the text is not paraphrased or summarized, but is the verbatim language used by the participant. Using direct quotations preserves the authenticity and richness of the participant's language, providing insight into their exact words. Example, a teacher might say, remote teaching was incredibly challenging because it felt like I was talking to a wall. Always indicate who is speaking in the quotation, especially in qualitative research where multiple participants might be quoted. This could be as simple as stating the participant's pseudonym or role before the quote. Identifying the speaker adds context to the quotation and helps the reader understand whose perspective is being shared. Example, Teacher A said, I felt disconnected from my students during remote learning. Use square brackets for clarity. Square brackets are used to add words or phrases to a quotation for clarity, especially if the original quote might be confusing or lacks context when taken out of its original setting. This can include explanations, clarifications, or translations. This technique ensures that the quote is understandable to the reader who might not be familiar with the original context or subject matter. Example, participant might say, it was difficult because the students weren't engaging, where the brackets text clarifies who they refers to. Ellipses are used to indicate that part of a quotation has been omitted. This is useful when only a part of a participant's response is relevant to the discussion, or when you need to condense a long statement without losing its meaning. Ellipses help streamline the quote while maintaining the integrity of the participant's original message. However, they should be used carefully to avoid misrepresenting the speaker's intent. Example, remote teaching was challenging, dot, dot, dot. It was hard to gauge students' understanding. The interviewer's beliefs, attitudes, and behavior can unconsciously influence the participants' responses. It's crucial for the interviewer to remain as neutral and non directive as possible. If an interviewer strongly believes in the benefits of remote teaching, for example, they might unintentionally lead participants to focus on positive aspects rather than challenges. Encourage reflective practice, meaning interviewers should critically assess their influence on the process and consider using techniques like peer debriefing to minimize bias. Data saturation occurs when no new information or themes are emerging from the interviews, indicating that enough data has been collected to fully address the research question. For example, after interviewing 15 teachers, you notice that the same themes keep reoccurring, suggesting that additional interviews might not yield new insights. Qualitative interviewing is a time-intensive process, from conducting the interviews to transcribing, coding, and analyzing the data. There's transcription software out there, or you might want to consider starting analysis while interviews are still going on to streamline the process. So the in-depth face-to-face interview has been widely recognized as a key method within feminist research, and this approach aligns with feminist principles by providing a space for voices to be heard in their own words and by valuing personal experiences as a legitimate source of knowledge. Feminist researchers emphasize the importance of understanding women's lives from their perspectives, and in depth interviews are an effective way to achieve this. By allowing participants to share their stories in detail, these interviews help challenge traditional power dynamics in research. So, feminist researchers might use in depth interviews to explore topics such as gender roles, body image, or experiences of discrimination, focusing on how women understand and navigate these issues in their own lives. In terms of Oakley, feminist researchers often prefer unstructured or semi structured interviews over structured ones, and this preference is rooted in the belief that rigid structured interviews can reinforce hierarchical relationships and limit the participants' ability to fully express their experiences. Um, Feminist researchers argue that it is unethical to treat participants merely as sources of data to be extracted without considering the impact of the research on them, and instead, this process should be collaborative and mutually beneficial. Feminist research also strives to create a non hierarchical relationship between researcher and the participant, where both parties engage as equals, and this approach challenges traditional power dynamics in research and encourages a more open and honest dialogue. Building rapport and fostering reciprocity are central to the feminist interview process. Researchers aim to establish a trusting relationship with participants where the sharing of personal stories is valued and respected. Example, in a study on women's health, a feminist researcher might use semi structured interviews to allow participants to guide the conversation based on what they feel is most important, rather than strictly adhering to a predetermined set of questions. Um, Despite the best intentions, feminist researchers acknowledge that there can be a tension between their interpretation of the data and the participants' own perspective, and this tension arises because the researcher, even with feminist principles, brings their own lens to the analysis, which might not fully align with how participants see and understand their own experiences. Recognizing and addressing this tension is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the feminist research, and researchers must be reflective and critical of their um, interpretations, ensuring that they remain as true as possible to the participants' voices. So, a researcher might interpret the participant's experience of motherhood in a way that emphasizes empowerment, while the participant herself might view it as a more complex mix of empowerment and sacrifice. So the researcher needs to be careful not to impose their interpretation over the participant's own understanding.